Explosive allegations of drug use, physical and sexual violence, and tales of emotional manipulation have dominated the news and social media feeds of many as the civil defamation trial of actors Johnny Depp against his ex-wife Amber Heard are played out in a Virginia courthouse. Beyond the salacious allegations, the trial raises serious issues about domestic violence, particularly violence and allegations involving both the man and the woman as a victim or as victims. Now, despite the powerful Me Too movement that we've all experienced over the last several years and the shift towards believing women in assault cases, the public sentiment in this case thus far has been with Johnny Depp. So today I'm asking, will that matter to the jury? And will the public's perception shift as Amber Heard continues her testimony? Experts weigh in, all coming up next.
Live from Los Angeles, this is the Special Report with Areva Martin.
In case you have not been glued to court TV and following every aspect of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard civil defamation case, here are the basics. Johnny Depp is suing Amber Heard for $50 million in damages. Now, he claims that she defamed him in a 2018 op-ed article that she posted in the Washington Post. In this article, she insinuates, without using Johnny Depp's name, that she was abused during her marriage. Now, Depp claims that this article caused him to lose his lucrative contract with Disney for another installation of the Pirates of the Caribbean. He also says he lost other major movie deals as a result of this op-ed piece. Amber Heard is countersuing Johnny Depp for $100 million. I know it's a whole lot of big numbers, but she is claiming that she was the victim of both sexual violence and physical violence throughout their marriage. Yesterday, Amber Heard took the witness stand. Now, this is following 4 days of testimony from Johnny Depp, in which he testified that he has never struck Amber Heard or any woman for that matter. Now, this trial has drawn millions of viewers online, and fans of Johnny Depp are lining the streets of the courthouse in Virginia to wave at him, to cheer him on, and to show their support. There's also this very large social media campaign, a hashtag Justice for Johnny, which has millions of people weighing in on a daily basis. This trial is expected to last at least several more weeks. And although it has tremendous financial implications, $50 million, $100 million, it also raises serious questions about domestic violence, again, particularly where the man is alleging to be the victim, drug use, and what happens when celebrities are on trial. So let's break this all down. My first guest is Tony Theofort. He is a Chicago-based trial attorney. He's also an adjunct professor at DePaul College of Law. Tony, welcome back. You, my friend, have been inside a lot of courtrooms and you've been a part of a lot of trials. You've analyzed a lot of trials. What's your initial reaction to what you've seen in this Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial?
Good morning again, Reva. It's good to see you. It's interesting, actually. When it first began, I saw it as another celebrity trial, but the implications of this trial are pretty huge. And I think that the testimony that I've heard from Depp's side of it has been interesting. The strategy has been interesting, and I'm anxious to hear what Ms. Heard's side presents and how this all shakes out.
So help lay people understand, because there's a lot of allegations going back and forth. He starts the lawsuit claiming he's entitled to $50 million. She countersues claiming she's entitled to $100 million. So what does all of this mean just in layman's terms?
Well, those numbers really have to do with, for both of them, I believe, the loss of income because both of them were shunned, according to their claims. Johnny Depp, of course, is saying that he was going to make another Pirates of the Caribbean, which is the role that makes him his money, and that was struck because of the allegations from the 2018 piece. So that's the relevant tie between what he's asking for and what he said he lost. She, on the other hand, says that in making the allegations against him in 2016, the original allegations that she was struck by him and she went into court with bruising on her face and sought an order of protection. She's saying that because of that, she immediately lost income. She lost and was shunned, essentially, because she even made the claim in the first place. So her $100 million has to do with that, as well as defamation that she's claiming occurred because of statements made related to I think a British trial for defamation and libel from a couple of years ago. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, but it's real stuff, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about that British trial, but I want to get back to this countersuit. So a countersuit gets filed because something is like a trigger. So you file a lawsuit against me, and then I come back and say, well, wait a minute, not only did I not do that to you, you did something to me.
Right.
Do you think Amber Heard would have filed a lawsuit against Johnny Depp but for the fact that he sued her?
I absolutely believe that was the trigger here. I don't, well, look at the timing of it. The Depp lawsuit was filed a year and a half, 2 years actually before the counterclaim. So there was no immediate counter here. They negotiated for a year on the original claim that Depp made. And when they weren't successful at getting it dismissed or settled or something like that, because Ms. Heard doesn't have the same access and resources as Johnny Depp has. And so when they couldn't get it settled, she then filed her counterclaim. So that is really interesting in terms of the ping pong match going on back and forth between the two of them. But there was definitely some delay and some reason it appears that Ms. Heard filed in a defensive posture as opposed to a plaintiff's posture, which would be, the initial claim.
And that's a really good point, because we can imagine as lawyers that what the Heard team was saying was, if this lawsuit that Johnny has filed against Amber goes away, we won't file a lawsuit. We'll just walk away and we'll just, consider ourselves, we can't get along. We had irreconcilable differences. We're divorced. You go your way, I'll go my way. And apparently Depp's team weren't willing to do that. And as a result, Amber's team, I would imagine, says, well, we have some leverage. If you want to go down this road and open this can of worms, we got this other big can of worms that we can open up as well. So here comes the countersuit. But it doesn't seem like she would have filed that suit if they could have gotten to some kind of settlement in those 2 years, those intervening 2 years from the time he filed his first lawsuit until the time she filed her countersuit. What do you imagine that the Depp team was? I know you weren't in the room, but if you had to think about what these cases are usually about, what do you imagine that the Depp team wanted from Amber that she wasn't willing to give up?
I got to tell you, from my standpoint, if I'm on the Depp team, there's nothing that she can do once she's made the allegation, because we're talking about the age of Me Too. So if Johnny Depp had dropped his claim, then he's essentially assenting to or agreeing with what she claimed in the Washington Post article that triggered this entire Depp lawsuit. So interestingly, this is not a matter of, I want 40 million. Amber Heard side said, we'll give you 10 million. Okay, we'll take that and walk away. Because frankly, no amount of money will give him his reputation back. And now that he has been essentially Me Too'd, we've seen other celebrities who have been canceled because of that. And because he is the type of actor who is needed to be accepted by Disney in that community because children watch those movies, right, he has a lot at risk here. So I actually think that he had no choice, frankly, but to sue her and to try to get this in a court of law, which will result in not just the money, because he don't really care about that. What it will result in is the restoration of his reputation. And we see that happening with all those people, as you mentioned before, outside of the courthouse. I think the balance here is that more than 3 times of the social media supporters have been for Depp as opposed to Ms. Heard. So it's working.
Yeah, let's talk about, you mentioned that British lawsuit. And I think it is relevant here because Johnny didn't sue the Washington Post. He just sued Amber Heard, even though the article was run in the Post. But in the British case that you referenced, he actually did sue a British newspaper for defamation. Why? What's the strategy behind that?
Well, to be clear, he lost that case in Great Britain against the newspaper. I'm not sure. And again, I don't want to step out of my lane here in terms of the rules there as opposed to the rules here. But I do know that had he sued the Washington Post over this, he would have a defendant in the Washington Post who's well-funded. And a well-funded defendant owned by Jeff Bezos. Amazon owns the Washington Post. Let's put all of this together. That well-funded defendant now has a position where Washington Post may be able to get some shine from this whole thing. It wouldn't be smart to include them in this lawsuit. They could have, but I think that the downside of that would not have accomplished the goal that he's trying to reach, which is the restoration of the reputation. So I think that strategically, that's probably why he didn't go through the Washington Post. Different circumstances in Great Britain. And by the way, those British tabloids get sued all the time by every celebrity. So again, I think that the strategy or the intent could have been different in the British lawsuit.
So just quickly on that British lawsuit, he did lose. It wasn't a jury trial. It was a trial before a judge. And what did the judge determine, essentially?
The judge determined that, to be clear, as to the Amber Heard allegations, he thought that there was overwhelming evidence that those allegations were in fact true.
The allegations of physical violence by Johnny Depp towards Amber Heard.
Right, which was the core, of course, of the litigation there, similarly to the litigation here. So it's about whether or not that thing is true. And so in Great Britain, he came up a big loser because that court believed that that allegation was true. Here,
well, let me ask you this, Tony. Will that determination, that ruling, that order by that court, will that get introduced as evidence in this civil trial?
Actually, it's been ruled inadmissible. But there are some portions of it or some of the allegations made that are common to both claims that are being allowed in. So it's kind of, and the jury's not aware necessarily of the substance or where these are coming from, but they can reference these prior kind of statements that were made because of that prior litigation. So
the judge's order didn't come in, but the judge did allow some parts of the trial to come in.
Yes.
Okay, so what does Johnny have to prove to win this lawsuit?
He'd essentially have to prove that Amber Heard was lying when she made the allegations in the 2018.
His name isn't even in the article. Does he have to first establish that this article is about him since he's not mentioned in it?
I think it's clearly referenced to him. The meat of that article really goes into her prior allegations. And they knew who the prior allegations were against because it was known to us back then during the divorce. We may not know the terms of the settlement, but during the divorce, it was known to us that the allegation was that he had hit her. He was physically abusive to her. That went away because that was probably viewed as a quest by her to get more from a divorce settlement from the general public. Mm-hmm. The op-ed changed it because it came, at the core of the Me Too movement, and the resulting allegation there caused him, according to him, to lose a bunch of money and lose his career. So, I think that where we are right now is frankly necessary based on the course of this.
So he's got to prove that that article is the reason he has lost contract or the potential contract, because there was no actual contract with Disney, right. The potential to be in the next installment of the Pirates and other movies. Yes. What if the jury believes that they both were abusing each other? Then who wins?
Well, the real issue here, and in the opening statements made by Ms. Heard's lawyers, the issue at the end of the day, once we get past all of the fighting and all of the stuff, because remember, they're not either on trial for fighting. This is not a criminal trial. This is not about proving those allegations beyond any reasonable doubt. What the focus is, were her allegations in the 2018 article false? And the prosecution, I apologize, but Mr. Depp's team actually has to prove that in order to prevail. That's going to be difficult because what we've heard so far is, his allegations that he was abused. She is now on the witness stand. She's on the stand right now as we speak. She's making counter allegations that she in fact was abused, or that his abuse allegations are, injuries that he caused himself because of his own behavior, drunken behavior, or
So if the jury believes Amber Heard, as you said, she's testifying now, she testified yesterday, if they believe that Johnny Depp struck her on that couch when she said she made a comment about the tattoo saying wino, and he smacked her and she laughed and he said, B, what's funny? Or you think you were funny, B, or something. And he smacked her a couple of other times. If they believe that happened, then she's telling the truth that she was abused, and truth is a defense to a defamation claim.
Right. Yes. And to be clear, she's then well on her way to winning the counterclaim, because the core of the counterclaim is that these things happened and I was defamed because they claimed that they didn't happen. So they're saying the same thing. That's why this is such an interesting. This is an all or nothing proposition. If the jury believes her claims, Johnny Depp loses and continues to lose what he's lost, which is his reputation.
But suppose, Tony, they believe her,
right,
that yes, he did smack her when she commented on that tattoo, but they also believe him that there were occasions where she hit him.
Sure. He's not.
Both can be true at the same time, right?
They can both be true at the same time, but for purposes of what it means for this trial, if the jury believes that she smacked him too, okay, but adding the first part, which means that they believe that Johnny Depp hit her. That's the core of this whole thing. Not actually whether she hit him back or whether she initiated it. That's relevant to whether or not he can make his claim, and that those things that she previously said she was lying about. So again, if they believe her claims, this case is over. I mean, it's over on both fronts in terms of the destruction of his reputation, as well as the $100 million that she will get or potentially get, depending on how the jury sees damages.
So these are both very skilled actors. Now, arguably, he's more skilled. Right. He has more experience than she does. How possibly get a jury sitting there? They've got pictures of him with cocaine and marijuana and alcohol. Obviously, the guy had a drug and alcohol problem, and people in their brains probably think people who use drugs and alcohol can get violent at times.
Right.
How are they going to decide who's telling the truth?
Right. And, I think there's obviously evidence that Ms. Heard was using alcohol and drugs too. So now we have a tie, right? And so we have two people who lose credibility. Both of them lose credibility in some space if at the time of the thing that they said happened, they then admit to being inebriated or intoxicated. So this is why I said at the beginning, this case is so interesting, because it has everything. And there is no clear winner here. In my mind, I think both sides are doing an excellent job. There's been some missteps by some of the lawyers for Ms. Heard that have been pretty famously, exposed. But
give us an example. I'm thinking of one. Which one are you thinking about?
This is the one with the cross-examination and the lawyer objects to his own question, first week of trial. So it was going very well for Johnny Depp. And to be clear, it was these sort of images that have continued to build in the public this support for Johnny Depp, because Johnny Depp looks like the strong man, the adult, right, who's bringing this case against this much younger woman who has every reason in the world to lie about him because he's big, rich, and successful. And so when she blunders, when her side blunders, it plays into that narrative that he's right and she's wrong.
But do you think the audience, I wonder if someone, a lesser known actress, like you said, Amber is, could ever get a fair trial against the beloved Jack Sparrow? So he already comes in with this huge fan base and public sentiment on his side. And this notion, let's face it, that people have, that younger women go after older men, they're gold diggers. I mean, that hasn't been said, but that's a lot of the implications, is she's a climber and she wants to latch onto him to improve her career. And so I just wonder if people can be fair to her given the notions that we have in this country, these misogynistic in a lot of ways tropes about younger women when they date or marry older men.
I think that because of those assumptions and tropes and all of these things that are based on these false, assumptions and narratives, I think that the lawyers have to do what they can to mitigate that on her side. One of the sad things that we have to do in advocacy is sometimes embrace the stereotype for purposes of fronting that information in an attempt to inoculate our client against the effects of it or that assumption by the jury. And sometimes confronting the jury with the assumption shames the jury into, jettisoning that so that they can actually make a decision on the evidence and the facts of the case and lay their assumptions aside. They will get jury instructions that tell them they're not supposed to use various biases and things like that. However, there are things that are ingrained in all of us based on what we've been taught and what we've seen, that if we're not actively trying to disassociate ourselves from those feelings, we will allow those to seep into important decision making. And so I can't say whether that will happen or not, but I would predict that her lawyers better guard against it to the extent that they can.
So we know we got a couple more weeks with this trial. Amber's going to be on the witness stand, maybe more than 2 or 3 days. We know Johnny was on for 4 days. What do you think the outcome's going to be? If you had to guess, crystal ball, what do you see happening?
I don't know. And I know you want a conclusion and I need to give you one. I think I'm being intellectually dishonest if I say, I think this is a close one because there's a balance here. We are in the age of Me Too, and I think that people are listening to women more with these sort of counterclaims. Compare this to Anita Hill. Compare this to Christine Blasey Ford. In those instances, when they were excoriated for their claims against very powerful men, but the claims for sexual harassment, the claims for sexual abuse have risen. So there's still a message here, regardless of whether Amber Heard wins or loses. She should be proud that she went forward. And I think it's important to the Me Too movement that this is happening. For purposes of who's going to win, though, I do think Depp has those advantages relative to, his power and those sort of things. So I'd like to see, this is a real contest between the old assumptions, the old establishment, those old prejudices, and the new movement or the newer movement that asks for equality in terms of when we're in a court of law to view both sides with some balance and listen to those facts. We'll have to see.
What should we look for coming up in the next week or so in this trial? What should we be really focused on?
Well, it's going to be a long trial. Ms. Heard has a line of witnesses. She's testifying now, really as the first witness for the defense side, but she's there on day 2. She could be there through tomorrow. And then she's got 5 or 6 witnesses, some of them that may be lengthy. So I think we're in for another 2 weeks, I think.
Any witnesses on her list that you've seen that you think it's going to be a critical witness?
Well, I think she called Elon Musk is one of her witnesses. And
what does Elon add? How does he help?
Apparently, there were some conversations or some things in real time during the allegations of the making. It's something in that space. So I don't think it's a character thing. I think that it really has to do with him being some sort of witness to something. And so it'll be interesting to see if that happens. And that swings that whole celebrity piece too. Think about it. If she brings in muscle like Elon Musk, believe what you want to, think what you want to think about him. He is a celebrity right now. We'll see what happens. This trial is going to be fabulous. Fabulous, I believe.
I can tell as a lawyer, this is one of those cases that you're like, oh, this is going to be on one of your next law school exams. Your students better be studying up.
So many issues. It's great.
A great issue spotter. Okay, Professor, your students better be watching Court TV because I could see this coming.
Can I give one shout before I get off, if you indulge me? My son Julian is graduating from Howard University this weekend with his film degree. He's headed out there to Hollywood to make it happen. So I want to congratulate my son.
Oh,
very proud of you.
What's his name?
Julian.
Okay,
Julian.
Julian. I think you said that. I wasn't. I didn't hear.
Yeah.
Okay, Julian. Congratulations. I was at the Howard University graduation right before COVID, so I guess it was 18 or so. Uh,
Right. The
have
last
fun.
live one.
You're gonna enjoy it. It's gonna be a wonderful weekend back in person after probably being virtual for the last year or so. Uh, and tell Julian this is the place to make dreams come true. So we're looking forward to having him out here and him doing some really big things. But
I will.
congrats to you, Dad, as well, because no kid graduates college without some lots of help from parents.
I
So
appreciate you. I appreciate it.
thanks, Tony. Always good to see you, my friend.
We'll see you next time. Thank you.
All right. My next guest, Dr. Wendy Walsh. She's a relationship expert and psychology professor at California State University. Good morning, Dr. Walsh. So you heard what Tony said, and I know you said you got a theory about the Elon Musk testifying angle for Amber Heard. So what's going on with Elon?
Okay, so right after she was married to Johnny Depp, she dated Elon Musk on and off for about a year. Now, remember, part of a defamation trial is you have to prove to this jury that she lied. You have to prove that she knew she was lying, and you have to prove that she did it with malice. And so part of that burden of proof on Johnny Depp's team is to prove that she has this whole history of lying. So as part of her divorce with Johnny Depp, she publicly said that she would take $7 million of her divorce settlement and she would give it to two charities, the Children's Hospital Los Angeles and the American Civil Liberties Union, that she would give each of these charities $3.5 million. Well, she gave $1.3 million to the American Civil Liberties Union and then ran into financial trouble herself and was unable to make those payments. Now, I want to be very clear, there was no contract here. It was just her telling the public that this is what she had planned to do. So Elon Musk stepped in and he paid $500,000 on her behalf and promised the ACLU that he would make 10 more payments of $500,000 to make sure that she covered her promise. So they had last week lawyers from the ACLU on trial, or on stand during this trial, basically saying that she hadn't made the payments. So now they have Elon saying, no, actually she has been making the payments and we're making them together. And she has every intention of making the payments. Even though she was running into great financial trouble, she's reaching out to friends to help her, to make sure that she can keep her word. You see, that's the key. They're trying to prove that she's not a liar.
Well, what's her relationship now with Elon? Because I remember reading that she and Elon, that she was just kind of filling the time. That came in through one of the agents that he texted her, or she was texting with one of the agents about the fact that it really wasn't a relationship. She was just kind of, buying some time as she was getting over Johnny Depp.
Well, this is pure gossip and speculation. You can read about it on the internet. But in July of 2021, Amber Heard welcomed a baby girl into the world through surrogacy. She used her egg and another man's sperm, and another woman grew it. There has been no disclosure of who the father of that child is. I think of myself in some ways as a huge fan of evolutionary psychologists, because evolutionary psychology is my most interesting area of human behavior. And generally, when men accumulate great amounts of resources, it is not enough to leave your name on buildings. You must leave your name on children, on genes, right? Leaving your legacy. The richer the man, tends to be the more wives, the more children. Elon Musk already has 7 children, 5 from his first wife, 2 from his second relationship. There's speculation that he may actually be the father of her child. We don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. Obviously, he will add another dimension to this trial if he is actually called. Let's talk, though, about, Wendy, what we have seen from the experts. We've seen this woman, Dr. Shannon Curry, who was called by the Johnny Depp team, and she said that Amber had borderline personality and said she was prone to irregular behavior and prone to violence, and that she didn't function like a normal person. What did you make of Dr. Curry's testimony, and do you think it was accurate? I know you haven't had a chance to diagnose or evaluate Amber personally, but do you think the doctor was spot on?
I don't know about Amber's potential diagnosis. I will simply say this, that damaged babies always find each other. They find each other in adult romantic relationships. If a relationship is an exchange of care, if a relationship is our infantile self saying, you be my mommy, I'll be your daddy, let's take care of ourselves. And in our own early lives, if there's been trauma, we will find romantic mates who ignite that trauma. But I also want to make it really clear here that all of this speculation is designed to be a distraction for the jury. This is not a domestic violence suit. This is not a divorce case. This is a defamation suit. We only need to answer the question, did she lie by saying she was a victim of domestic violence? It doesn't matter if she started it. It doesn't matter if she hit back in self-defense. It doesn't matter if he hit back in self-defense. Did he hit? That's all that matters in this case.
But if that's, and I agree with you, that's the legal issue. So why do you say it's not about domestic violence? Because if she's in a marriage and a man hits her, that is classic domestic violence.
But we're not trying to prove that she was a domestic violent assailant to him. That is not what the case is trying to prove.
She has to prove that she was abused by him.
Right.
And Johnny said he's never hit a woman. Never hit her.
Yeah, I laugh because I think that assertion, I mean, he already lost his case against the UK newspaper who called him a wife beater, because obviously they had enough evidence that in fact this was true. The research, Areva, is so damning that women who are victims of domestic violence, first of all, often take at least 6 or 7 times of leaving that partner to leave permanently. Secondly, usually when, even when they engage in back and forth, women are more likely to sustain greater injuries. And usually when a woman hits in a domestic violence situation, it is in defense. There's lots of research to support this. Also, if you look at Amber's demeanor, I've heard people comment about her on the stand that she seems like she's acting, or she seems like she's faking, or that she's angry or vindictive. I want to remind you that when you live in a traumatic bond for years, you become a little toughened. You become a little hardened. You become a little afraid. And so in order for her to retell her trauma, she's going to have to distance herself from it just a little bit and be able to tell it in a way that seems like she's telling a story, because that's how our brain deals with trauma. It separates ourselves from the trauma.
Yeah, you mentioned babies who've been, or younger people who've been traumatized and how they seek out certain kinds of other damaged people. We do know that Johnny Depp talked about being abused by his mother being physically abusive towards him and his sister, and Amber apparently was abused by her father. So both of these individuals had trauma in their earlier lives, which is, according to you, which is why you're not surprised that they sought each other out. But Johnny, of course, as you said, that UK trial determined that he was a wife beater, abuser. He lost that trial. He's taken the witness stand, testified under oath that he's never hit Amber, despite the allegations that she's making to the contrary. What do you make of Depp's history? Apparently, the women that he was involved in before Amber are supportive of him and are suggesting that they never had any kind of violent encounter with him. Does that matter, or should that factor in?
Do you remember that messy Winona Ryder relationship? And she was just 17 years old. We also have to understand this power differential in most of his relationships. He's 22 years older, or 23 or 4 years older than Amber Heard. She was in her early 20s. When he started with Winona Ryder, she was a teenager. Nobody said any time, but now we're looking back with different eyes going, wait a minute. His pattern of control is about having more celebrity, more money, and choosing much younger women. His drug use is just another example of often masking feelings. People who work in addiction will say that they often do what's called a dual diagnosis, meaning that the first diagnosis is addiction, but once you remove the drugs and alcohol, you find the feelings underneath that were being suppressed by the drug, and then you figure out what the real diagnosis is. I would venture to say that the abuse he suffered in his childhood, and the abuse she suffered in her childhood was the thing that made them have this dysfunctional attachment style and find each other. But again, this answers the why, but the why doesn't matter here. The why is, did it happen?
Yeah, and we know the statistics are 1 in 3 women are likely to experience some kind of intimate partner violence in their lifetime. So domestic violence as it relates to women is a serious, very serious issue. And as you said, it takes a lot of women 6 to 7 times leaving and going back and leaving and going back before they can leave permanently. Given those stats, Wendy and Dr. Walsh, why do you think the public sentiment is so skewed towards Johnny Depp? Is it simply because of his largeness as a celebrity, his beloved character on the Pirates of the Caribbean? What's causing people, men and women, to just say this is a young climber, gold digger type, shouldn't be believed, she asked for it, she knew, blah, blah, blah. And yet they're holding him up like he's being tortured. Even like I said, this hashtag justice for Johnny, like he needs some kind of justice. Like what is going on with the people of this country?
Even women have patriarchy swimming around in their brains because they were molded by it. But I think you said the two big ones is his beloved characters. And I want to remind everybody that the characters that actors play on TV are the people they wish they were, not the people they are. And secondly, his enormous celebrity and his power. We love to victim blame in our culture, especially when it's women, because I don't think people have a deep understanding of the psychological handcuffs that happen in a traumatic bond. You see, what happens is there's this cycle of violence that's followed by the most seductive honeymoon phase. They bestow gifts, they love bomb, they promise, they get sweet and intimate and apologize and promise that they'll never ever do this again. And you almost believe them. And it becomes so seductive. And then the cycle starts to begin again. And this is why, if anybody's watching today, if you are in a traumatic bond, if you are a victim of emotional, financial, or physical abuse, the time to get out is during the honeymoon phase. That's your best chance to get out safely. And it's hard to keep your head straight during those moments. But people don't understand that. So they say, oh, she was a gold digger. She stayed there for the money. She stayed there for the celebrity. Well, maybe that was the thing that sustained her in the intermittent periods between the great trauma.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because she's already testified very similarly to what you've said. She said that Johnny was like two people. There was this warm, very caring, very loving side that was the attraction that, made her attracted to him. And then there was this violent side. And after a violent encounter, he would come back and be super loving and super caring. And the gifts she testified about these enormous gifts that he would give her dad. So dad was middle class. And so here comes rich guy, celebrity, giving him, I don't know, she didn't say what it was. Like, let's imagine yachts or, Rolex watches or things that this middle class guy could never buy on his own. And now that's endearing, himself to dad. And dad now thinks he's a wonderful guy because he's giving dad, the big power tools or whatever he's giving dad. So yeah, you just pretty much nailed what the testimony from her has been.
In fact, this is classic narcissistic behavior, right? So what narcissists do is they try to separate from your friends and family to isolate you as much as possible. And one of the ways they do that is they only present the good guy to even your most closest family members. So they're even and they go to your close family and say, she's having some mental health problems right now. And they try to collude with the family members and the friend. And then in the meantime, the internet has now learned the word gaslight. You're being gaslit, told that you are imagining things and that you're crazy in some way. And that in itself can induce negative symptoms of mental health, right? So I really want to encourage, Areva, during COVID, I created a TikTok channel and I have over 1 million followers, and the predominant are women, compassionate, loving, empathetic women with an anxious attachment style who get attached to narcissists, abusers. And so my whole TikTok is about how to break free from traumatic bonds. And I am amazed even more than sexual abuse and physical abuse. When I read the comments on my TikTok, how many women of America, in America, are subjected to financial abuse?
Mm.
And this is what Johnny Depp is doing right here. He wants to bankrupt her. And yes, there are more zeros at the end of these numbers than most of us would ever see in our lives, but it doesn't matter. It's the same whether you're in a small community court and somebody's going after, $50,000, he's going after $50 million. It's the same to her. It's the same event.
Let me play devil's advocate, Wendy. There are some allegations against her that, if true, are very disturbing, like the poop, the feces left on the bed that apparently she did, allegations that she did strike him, that she also had these violent outbursts. What are we to make of that?
So it's nothing. She's an angry woman who was hurt and she retaliated in some way. So has nothing to do with whether he ever hit her even once, because then she didn't lie in this defamation suit.
Walsh, you're mid-sentence. Let's hope. Okay, you froze on us. You said it has nothing to do with anything.
Okay, what I said is it has nothing to do with anything. A woman who is a victim of domestic violence is very hurt and very angry and may retaliate in ways that seem not normal to us because she's not in a normal relationship. But all her lawyers have to prove is that he hit her or hit back at least once for her not to be lying about the fact that she wrote in the Washington Post that she was a victim of domestic violence. It doesn't matter if she antagonized him. It doesn't matter if she hit him. It doesn't matter if she put poop somewhere. None of this matters. He has every right to walk out and walk away. But if he laid one finger on her and a cavity search for drugs, if he assaulted her in any way, then she wasn't lying.
Yeah, and at this point, there are allegations going back and forth, and the jury is going to have to decide who's telling the truth. And they'll do that based on the demeanor of the witnesses. They'll do it based on what comes in from other witnesses. But I do think this case, again, highlights the prevalence of domestic violence. We've seen the number for women. We were looking for the number for men. The CDC says about 1 in 10 men. Is that the accurate number, about the number of men that experience intimate partner violence?
Yes, but let's be very clear. It is more often, let's just be honest. Men are physically stronger than women. They perpetuate greater physical harm on women. So if a woman slaps back and he calls, then okay, there you go. Now, we do know that there are a few mentally unhealthy women who may use weapons on men, but definitely not to the extreme that men hit women. Men have higher testosterone. I want to remind you of a few statistics. If a woman owns a gun in the house, that gun is more likely to be used on herself than ever used to protect her. Secondly, if a woman ever suffers physical violence or murder, it's most likely to be her most intimate partner. Okay? Men have physical strength and have more ability to leave or protect themselves. This is not to dismiss the few men who also get stuck in traumatic bonds, have psychological handcuffs and can't leave, and have women who are abusers, but it is very small compared to what women endure at the hands of men.
Yeah, no, and obviously I think this case, we haven't seen a high profile case like this where you have a man alleging that he has been abused by a woman. And it is causing us, I think, as a society to recognize that, as you just said, there are men who are in psychologically and emotionally and physically abusive relationships. But yes, overwhelmingly abusive.
My biggest concern, Areva, my biggest concern here is that we are diluting the important power of Tarana Burke's #MeToo. That women are finally speaking up. Women of all socioeconomic status and all ethnicities are speaking up. And I think that to start a #MenToo at this time is retaliation. That's what I think.
Yeah. I feel like you, Wendy, that this case Amber Heard is no saint, obviously, and she has done some things that I'm sure she is not proud of. But at the end of the day, she has, based on her allegations, experienced domestic violence, and we've got to remain focused on that. And I think we're getting really inundated with a lot of messages, and this social media frenzy and support for Johnny Depp has the power to dilute in many ways the progress that we've made because of that Me Too movement. That concerns me.
I mean, look where we are this week with the potential to lose Roe v. Wade. I mean, here, we talk about this patriarchy we've been swimming in for so long, and the racial injustices in this country. We're finally getting a voice because of #MeToo and Black Lives Matter. And then I am watching the behind the scenes, the courts, the political votes, the Supreme Court starting to knock these down bit by bit by bit. And I think we need to be most vigilant now.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we see women, because obviously there was a woman involved in that decision that got leaked by the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett. She's a woman, and we're seeing women in large numbers supporting Johnny Depp. And I think you said it best when you said we are not immune from viewing the world through the patriarchal lenses that we've all been, brought up in and surrounded by. And we as women have to try our best to divorce ourselves from that patriarchal, thinking that permeates, that is pervasive, and it's hard.
I want to remind you that most powerful women up to the early to mid 2000s did not get to the top of the food chain during patriarchy by fighting against it or dismantling it.
No,
they did it by colluding with it.
Absolutely. And now we are in this moment where we are challenging it, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We knew it would be. So we had uncomfortable conversations. Thank you so much, Wendy, for helping us today.
Thank you. Good to see you. I just want to say, I want to fangirl for a moment. Areva, I love you. I love everything you do. And I'm so excited to be here.
I love you too. And we've been trying to get you here forever. And I'm going to have you back because you have such great insights. And we think alike. So that's always good. I love my guests that think like me. Have a good one, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Now, my next guest, we've been talking about the legal aspect, the psychological expert, psychological aspect. Now let's talk about public relations, media, and crisis, because this is all of that rolled up in one. And I have with me one of the best experts in the country. His name is Carlos Scott. He is a media and crisis expert. Good morning, Carlos.
How are you?
You do crisis management. This is a 5-alarm fire for these two celebrities, and they have everything at stake here and everything to lose in terms of their careers and contracts with big studios like Disney. What do you do in this case?
Well, the main things you try to do in all of these cases, to be perfectly honest, but specifically this one, is try to stay out of the courts, try to stay out of the public spectrum, because, when you're an actor, right, there's a lot of, there's a budget, but then there's also insurances. I'm talking about like hundreds of millions of dollars that these studios, producers, and so forth take out, just in case of, things happen. Well, they also take out a lot of times insurance on the stars, no different than if you're going on a tour. Like, remember Michael Jackson, that whole thing with him started because the promoters actually hired that doctor and the only way they were going to sign off on it was if Michael Jackson was in good health in order to tour. Now, with Johnny Depp and Amber's case, I've said this in a previous interview, this is a lose-lose for everybody. Now, granted, the legal expert you had on, great guy, I love his insight. He brought up something very valid, and that is Johnny almost didn't have any choice but to do something to file back. To file, and then obviously she then countersued. But in the perfect world, and I've been through some, I've been through through the fires, all right? You want to stay out of the public, and you definitely want to stay out. You don't want to be in anybody's courtroom in these proceedings, because once you're an attorney, Areva. And so, once you go into those courtrooms, all bets are off. They can ask you anything. You don't know who are their different guests they're going to bring on to testify against, witnesses or what have you. And so these are the things, in a lot of cases, it's those witnesses and people that testify and other things that they bring up that actually do more damage than the actual case that you're dealing with,
Right.
Which is another reason why when our clients and their attorneys, we get together on these type of things, we're doing everything we can to keep our clients out of the public, try to keep their mouths shut about this. Like, hey, we will issue statement. You stay off of Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, because
Carlos, I hear what you're saying, but that, this horse is out the barn. They are in court. They've been in court for the last couple of weeks, and they're going to be in court. And we've seen some graphic photos of piles of cocaine and piles of, marijuana and liquor bottles. And we've seen, these graphic text messages with Johnny Depp referring to his wife in ways and terms that you wouldn't even talk about, your worst enemy. So I wonder, Tony said Johnny Depp didn't have a choice from his perspective legally. He had to file to try to win, not so much the money, but to win, to establish that he was defamed. And that means establishing that those allegations of abuse are false.
Right.
I wonder, even if he wins this lawsuit, what are the chances that Disney wants to be associated with an actor that has revealed this level of drug use, this level of misogynistic statements, abuse? I mean, whether he hit the woman or not, he's called the woman some names. That's abuse. So we need to be really clear about that.
Right.
We hit her, but we got the text message. We got the receipts on that. So some stuff is not deniable. So is a student going to pick this guy up given that conduct?
I don't think, let's be clear about this. I don't think Disney will. Now, whether that's Netflix, Paramount, MGM or some other studio or what have you. But I'm not a psychic. I'm a PR, and Johnny will never ever work for Disney again in any capacity. This is popping popcorn. And so
no more pirates,
and because
no more pirates installations, no more.
Oh, no.
Okay, come on.
That ship is sailed. And he said some things publicly, even during this trial about Disney, that were kind of shocking to me, which further puts the nail in the coffin to.
Give me an example of what you heard that shocked you as a PR professional.
Well, he said something to. I saw a clip the other day, basically saying that that he wouldn't do another Pirates or work with Disney or whatever. So to me, that kind of didn't make any sense, because I'm like, aren't you suing because you didn't get an opportunity to? So why would you then in a court case say, that literally made no sense to me. And I'm hoping that I misheard that or didn't see that in the context. But regardless of what Johnny says, we can't undo seeing the cocaine. We can't undo seeing those text messages. We can't undo. There's a lot of things that we can't unsee and unhear. And especially the Disney executive, because Disney, they have a brand to protect. And so, but with these other production companies who aren't Disney and who don't cater to children as their primary breadwinners, primary demographic, he's not going to not have a career. It just won't be at Disney. I feel.
Amber has hired a new PR firm, but there is this petition that's circulating now to get her kicked off of this Aquaman 2 movie. And I think about 2 million people, maybe even more, have signed this petition to get her kicked off this movie. And the thinking was that she hired this new team because the public sentiment was favoring Johnny and there weren't enough positive stories out there about her, which is why we're seeing some stories now about the cavity search and all these other horrific things that she said happened to her. Do you think if she wins, what happens to her career? Does it soar?
I don't necessarily, the jury is out on that, pardon the pun, but I do feel like she can possibly resume her career? To what level? I mean, think about it. We are still in the height of the Me Too movement. And for a woman to win, even though this case per se isn't about domestic violence, per se, it's something, it's defamation, but you can't ignore the domestic violence aspect of it. Maybe that's just me, but I do feel like if she were to win this case, and even if they were to settle, that would, to a lot of people, that would still be considered a win. I feel like that she can at some point resume her career. Speaking of a PR standpoint of view, she definitely, there's some mental health kind of things there. And, she could possibly turn this thing around by getting some counseling, making it very public that she's getting that counseling. And hey, maybe even becoming an ambassador for one of these mental health organizations. We had a client that went through a very public situation, and it was mental health related. And she actually turned it around because she became an ambassador, and she went on to win awards for her work in the mental health space. So hopefully that's something that her people are looking at as well. But
why do you
she
say
definitely needs to do something.
What has come out in this trial that causes you to believe that she's suffering from some mental health issues?
Well, there were testimony in reference to alluding to her being bipolar or having, split personalities and different things of that nature. And even if they didn't, I mean, we can't unsee some of the erratic behavior that we've seen of her either, right? And so those things, you said in a previous interview earlier today about, it was said rather that, hurt people seek other hurt people, and then they kind of lean on each other, right? Mm-hmm. And that could very well be the case with her and Johnny, right? So with that being said, why not just embrace the fact, hey, I had this horrible upbringing. I never really got the professional help that I needed when I was a child, and even now as an adult. And this case has really, lit a fire in me to know that I have some unsettled and unresolved, issues that I need professional help with, that I can't just sit on the back burner anymore, and make that a priority. Her career has to be secondary.
Yeah, no, and the issue of PTSD has been testified about as it relates to both of them, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. I think it disturbs me mm-hmm. that people have sided so with Johnny Depp and are ignoring the fact that she sat next to her husband and she said, "What's up with this tattoo?" and he smacks her. Yeah. The violence that she describes is so graphic and so horrific. Now, yes, as you said, she's done some things herself, and the doctor explained why victims of domestic violence strike out and they do some things also because they're angry. Right. Yeah, I think there's an opportunity here to really get people to focus on the fact that domestic violence is real. Now, if he feels like he's also a domestic violence victim, then he too maybe should step up in that way that you just described, and he become an ambassador for men who've been brutalized or have experienced some degree of violence. But I think they both have an opportunity here to turn this into something that's not just about them, because right now it's so messy and it's so about their little back and forth that I think is turning a lot of people off. But there's some bigger issues here. Right. Important.
The bigger issues, and what I don't want, and I think you said as well, what I don't want people to do is ignore the domestic violence aspect on either side, because we don't talk about it a lot, because men, we're the big, I'm a 205-pound guy, former football player and all that. And so we're strapping. And so we're very physically imposing to most women that we're going to encounter. But there are men that are also victims of domestic violence, whether it's emotional, whether it's, financial, and sometimes it's physical. And so with that being said, they need to both seek professional help for their personal lives, and then what semblance of their careers they can resume. That should be, to be perfectly honest, on the back burner. But yeah, now that it's out, she definitely did the right thing by hiring. I heard about that, and she had no choice because they are literally killing her, pardon the pun, on social media. But it is odd. I can't, and these are women.
Yeah.
I think that's
there's a TikTok hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp, 7.8 billion. Is it billion or million? My producers tell me billion.
Yeah.
That sounds insane. I hope that's
Yeah.
mistakes. But here's the point. There's a whole lot of love out there for Johnny Depp, and as you said, it's coming from women.
Right.
No,
Right.
okay. My producer said it's B with a billion. Billion. That's how much support he has. That's wow. Okay, I'm out of time, Carlos. Thank you so much for your insights. This is a case we're all going to be watching. Maybe the next 2-3 weeks, we're going to get some resolution, and we'll start.
Yes, get your popcorn.
I know. We'll start to see what happens with respect to both of them as they try to resume their careers in Hollywood. Always good to see you.
Thanks for having me. And I've always been a big fan of yours, and Nurse Alice speaks so glowingly of you, and I'm just I feel like I said, I'm just a fan of yours, and I'm a fellow autism dad, autism parent. So keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Give my regards to the nurse. Always good to hear from her as well. Wow.
Right.
Thank you to all of my guests this morning. What a fascinating case. And, you may not be a fan of either of these actors. You may not have watched their movies. You may not even have known that, who Jack Sparrow was. I had to ask my producers. I'm not a big fan of the Pirates movie. But this case is important to me because I do care about women, and I do care about domestic violence, and I care about the Me Too movement. And this case for me is about all of those things, these bigger societal issues that are getting played out because of this nasty, divorce proceeding and back and forth between this celebrity couple. So we all should care about this because every 9 seconds a person experiences some kind of physical abuse from a domestic partner. You heard the statistics from Dr. Wendy Walsh about how many women are killed because of domestic violence. We know that 1 in 3 women will experience some kind of domestic violence in their lifetime. So these are real issues. I have a national domestic violence hotline number that we are putting up because we want, as Dr. Walsh said, anyone that feels trapped in a relationship that's abusive in any way, whether that's emotional abuse or financial abuse, and definitely physical abuse, reach out. There is help. There are resources that are available. It can be very difficult. We've done some shows on domestic violence during the pandemic last year, and just hearing some of the heart-wrenching stories from women as they were trying to leave. And Dr. Walsh told us there's this honeymoon period that happens often in these situations, and that is the time, according to the doctor, that is the best time to try to get out of a relationship. But we know it takes a lot of times. And as family members and friends, we have to be patient and have to support that individual that is going through any kind of domestic violence situation, whether it's a man or a woman. This is a case we're going to continue to follow, and we're going to continue to advocate for those individuals that find themselves trapped in these kind of relationships. And we're going to hope that they get the help, and that we as a community provide more education, more awareness, and more resources. Be safe out there. Remember, we're all in this together.